The author of They Were Her Property. Hello, one and all. This is a very important conversation. I'm sure it's going to stir up some controversy in a number of different quarters, so be prepared for that. So thank you for joining us. Kirsten, we'll start with you. There's been a lot of talk about why white women support President Trump despite of, or perhaps because of, his policies and his tone. What's your take on this?
Well, I think there's a lot of different ways that we have to look at this. I think one of the first things is that people will say that they support him for reasons other than his racist language, which we don't have time to go through, but there's all sorts of things starting from the launch of his campaign all the way up until the latest campaign, the way he demonized people trying to come to our country on the caravan. And they'll say, well, I'm not racist, I just voted for him because I didn't like Hillary Clinton, and I just want to say that that doesn't make you not racist. It actually makes you racist. If you support somebody who does racist things, that makes you racist. So I just want to establish that. As for why white women do it, I think we have to recognize that white men are doing it as well, but I think sometimes we would hope that we would get better behavior from white women because white women are themselves oppressed and that they would therefore be able to align themselves with other oppressed people. But I think we have to remember that the white patriarchal system actually benefits white women in a lot of ways, and they're attached to white men who are benefiting from the system that was created by them, for them, and their fathers and their husbands and their brothers are benefiting from the system, and so they are also benefiting.
I just want to read something. It's from a Vox article, and it says that the war on crime has been pitched as an effort to keep white women safe. White women have been the plaintiffs in some lawsuits against affirmative action, and conservatives have argued that the practice harms white women, even though research has shown that white women have been some of the greatest beneficiaries of affirmative action. It shows you there the contradiction when you actually really think about the policies. People will say that that white women are actually voting against their own interests. I'm not sure if that is true, because maybe the better interest to them is what they get from voting for people like President Trump and Republicans. Stephanie, you're quoted in this Fox article saying, for centuries, white women have invested in white supremacy because their whiteness affords them a particular kind of power that their gender does not. Explain what you mean by that.
So as a historian, I explore white women's economic investments in the institution of slavery, and what that has led me to understand is that there's this broader historical context that we need to keep in mind when we're looking at white women's voting patterns today, and as we look at their support, their overwhelming support of Donald Trump. And so what I meant was that we tend to think of white women as primarily focusing on their gendered oppression, that because they are oppressed as women, that oppression will allow for them to ally and to sympathize with other dispossessed and disempowered peoples in the nation. But my research actually shows that they long had a deep investment in white supremacy, and not only did they benefit from it, but they participated in its construction and its perpetuation, not just in the context of slavery, not just in the colonial period, but well after slavery was over.
You said that it was overwhelming. It's 52%. It is a majority, but it's 52%. It's not overwhelming, but it is a majority.
Well, what I meant by overwhelming was emotionally overwhelming.
Got it.
And the response that we've.
So, Alice, why do you think that white women support President Trump? Do you think they identify more with being, as she said, white than they do with being female? She just said that.
I think when we're talking about the political arena, voters, women and men, identify themselves as either Republican, Democrat, Independent, or whatever their political party. And I strongly disagree with the characterization that women are oppressed, and by nature of that oppression, they should naturally vote for another group of people that are oppressed. I think that's just not how politics works. I think as a Republican or a Democrat or whatever your political leanings is, you should vote for people that represent those policies. I'm a Republican. I support this president. I voted for this president. I did so because of his policies. I do not agree with his tone and tenor. Don, I've been on your show dozens and dozens of times discounting his behavior, his tone, his tactics, the things he says about women, his denigrating women, and I don't tolerate that. But his policies are what I stand for.
But isn't that Part of the policies?
Don,
Is that not
no,
part
they're
of the
not.
policies?
No, they're not, Don. The two, they're separate. Look, I worked really hard for a candidate that had the character befitting of this office. Unfortunately, he didn't win the will of the Republican Party to become the nominee, and I supported Donald Trump's policies over Hillary Clinton's. And let me just say this, Kirsten is a dear friend of mine, but I resent the fact that she says that I'm racist because Donald Trump says racist things. I support this president because of his policies, and the things that he says that are disparaging and disgusting, which I've said many times, those don't represent me.
But Alice, you don't have to support him. You could not vote. I mean, that's the thing. I could say there's a Democrat who does everything that I agree with, but they say misogynist or racist thing. I would not vote for them. And I just want to step back for a second and say, look, we spent a lot of time talking about Republican women. Look, there's a problem with white women. It doesn't matter whether they're Democrats or Republicans or nothing. There's a problem with racism. Every white person benefits from an inherently racist system that is structurally racist. So we're all part of the problem. So I'm not trying to point my finger at you or at another person, but I think we have to recognize that there's institutional racism in this country. And by saying I'm just going to support somebody who you just said says racist things and does racist things is a problem.
And if I could add to that, and just a point of clarification. So I did not say that white women voted for Trump because they were racist. What I actually said was that there's this broader historical context in which white supremacy is quite important to white women, not simply as the kind of beneficiaries of white supremacy, but as orchestrators, part of the builders of supremacy. So just to clarify that, and I agree totally with what Kristen said. This is not about simply conservative white women. This is a phenomenon that is spread across the country, whether in the South or the North. You can see that this is, and it's not an indictment against all white women. This is about a certain percentage of these white women who do indeed vote for a man who is certainly not speaking to their interests as women or as human beings.
Yeah.
Let me just be honest about it.